Wow, some 9 Inch Nails. That's a nice upbeat way to start the show. Hey, everybody, welcome back.
Positive Atheist.
Yeah, that's it, I tell ya. Welcome back to another episode of Atheist Experience, folks. I'm your host, Martin Wagner. My co-host for today is Mr. Russell Glasser.
Hello.
David Clark is apparently taken ill today. He's staying home, and I can certainly sympathize. I'm coming down from a massive, chest thing.
You still sound like it, kind of.
So sort of not 100%, so going around, seems to be. Our guest today is Mary McManamee, folks. I'm sure you all remember.
Hi.
We are live February 3rd, 2002. This show is sponsored by Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. ACA holds weekly meetings every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. at the Hot Jumbo Bagel Shop, 307 West 5th Street between Guadalupe and Lavaca, except for the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series at the Longhorn Room of First Cafeteria in North Cross Mall. This being the 3rd of February, our lecture series was today, and Mary is here to talk a little bit about what went on. It was a most stimulating talk. I don't know who our next month's speaker is going to be yet, but I'm sure as soon as I find out, we will tell you folks. Let me see. Godless Gamers is a little spin-off group of ACA. Takes place every Monday night at the home of Jeff D. and Manda. For information or directions, contact Jeff or Manda, or you can go to the ACA mailing list and join the Atheist Gamers ACA website and join the Atheist Gamers mailing list. ACA Happy Hour is every Wednesday night at about 7:30 p.m. at Antonio's Tex-Mex. That's near the intersection of I-35 and 183. And that's a really nice, convenient evening get-together for folks who can't make the Sunday morning meetings.
Right.
Even though I don't tend to make very many of any of them at all. But that's just me. You shouldn't use me as the guideline for how to do these things. For more information on the Atheist Community of Austin, you can hit our fine website at atheist-community.org or go online. No, that's what I just told you to do. 371-2911 is our voicemail that you can call for more information. See, I'm still kind of coming out of my mental fog here. Just, all right, there will be a creation-evolution debate. This ought to be very amusing. It's popping up February the 15th at the UT campus in room UTC 2.112A. There is an admission price for it. But this is being sponsored by Helping Austin Area Schools, which is a registered student organization at UT with concerns about the quality of science education in Austin's public schools. These kinds of things tend to be packed full of Christians in the audience, and so they have extended a special invitation to unbelievers and folks like us, supporters of science, what have you. Ought to be amusing, if nothing else. That's February the 15th. Coming up. And for more information, you can also visit our website on the upcoming events calendar. And the fellow masterminding the whole thing, you can contact him via email at pougie@mail.utexas.edu. All right, so there we are. That starts us up for another new show. I was not here last week, but I caught the last 10 minutes of the show at home. It was kind of novel being able to watch the show at home for the first time in years, and it looked like an excellent show. I'm sorry. I want to see.
It was.
I want to see.
Great discourse.
Yeah, I want to see the tape very much so. But why don't we then, without further ado, kick it over to Russell and see what's going on in the world today with the news.
Okay, we've got a number of interesting news stories this week. Fetuses are children, proposed federal rule says. In a move that worried abortion rights supporters, the U.S. government said Thursday it was proposing a rule that defines an unborn fetus as a child, saying it was meant to allow public money to be used to provide prenatal care for women. Both anti-abortion groups and groups supporting abortion rights said the proposed change in the state Children's Insurance Health Program, or SCHIP for short, which would call a child a child from the moment of conception, would effectively give the unborn fetus a new legal status. The provision would enable states to make immediate use of the more extensive funding already available under SCHIP to provide prenatal care for more low-income pregnant women and their babies, the Health and Human Services Department said in a statement. Let's see. Abortion rights groups have feared that President Bush, who opposes abortion in most cases, would seek to erode abortion rights, and they worried that elevating the legal status of the fetus could make it easier to outlaw abortion, which, let's face it, why else are they...
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, I can't imagine the motivation otherwise for doing this.
We've got a couple of interesting and contradictory quotes.
Because, I mean, come on, when has, the Republican Party ever, cared about low-income, welfare moms?
Right.
I mean,
all of a sudden they're...
Never.
Yeah, I mean...
Anyway...
trying to turn over a new leaf here? Come on, I mean, I'm not buying it.
Thompson is the Secretary for Health and Human Services, or HHS. He denied the purpose of the rule change was to redefine the legal status of an unborn baby.
But that's what it does.
Well, here's his quote. I said what we are going to do is provide prenatal care. What we are going to do is take care of poor women to be able to provide prenatal care. How anybody can try and turn this into a pro-choice, pro-abortion argument, I don't understand. But then, Douglas Johnson, same week, legislative director for the National Right to Life Committee, had this to say about the proposed bill. We applaud this Bush administration proposal to recognize the existence of an unborn child in order to allow the baby and the mother as well to receive adequate prenatal care, a concept to which only the most extreme pro-abortion ideologues will object.
So
now explain this to me.
There you go.
If Tommy Thompson says it's got nothing to do with abortion, then why would the most extreme pro-abortion ideologues object?
Well,
good question.
Here's the thing. Okay, I have always been very troubled by the way in which the whole abortion issue has been turned into, a religious issue. See, I've always thought that this should be something that should be discussed strictly as a medical problem.
Right, because there are legitimate problems with having abortions that are practical.
Sure.
But that's not really what they're talking about.
Right. But, it seems to me what I find ironic is that the one thing that it seems to me, would stop, the abortion, the number of abortions that take place simply because, someone goes, oops, and... in some sort of form of retroactive birth control, which is kind of incredibly inefficient anyway. But the one thing that would
expensive too.
Yeah, and expensive. The one thing that would prevent that from taking place would be something else that the anti-abortion types are just as opposed to, which is comprehensive sex education in the schools.
Right.
Okay. What they want is this stuff that teaches this really kind of idealized, abstinence only thing, which studies have shown aren't any more effective than just a fully comprehensive sex education curriculum.
And here's something I often say to because a lot of the pro-abortion people you'll hear saying, "Oh, well, they screwed up by having sex. It's time to take personal responsibility." What I always ask is, what about a married couple that isn't ready to have children yet? Are they expected to be abstinent too?
Well, I don't know.
Question.
I mean, I guess in the minds of some of the real extreme, attitude, yeah, quite possibly.
Yeah.
And it's really, as a woman, it's very insulting for somebody to say that a bunch of congregated cells in my womb is a child, that's able to fend for itself. It's very insulting.
Yeah, it's...
And, I can understand that abortion is not the kind of birth control that we hope people would need to rely on a regular basis.
Ideal.
But ideally, but we don't live in an ideal world, people. And if we did, it would be different, but we don't.
But the way to smooth those things over again is to educate people, and the degree to which people, especially young people, and especially people in these disenfranchised and poorer communities, are just completely uneducated is appalling. I had a friend in Houston some years ago, and he and his girlfriend were having a baby, and they wanted it. So this wasn't like some horrible accident. It was all intentional. But because they were financially down on their luck, so they went to one of these free clinics to get taken care of, and they described the scene there as just being this one of just almost just chaotic. It's almost like Monty Python, where they're like, the meaning of life, right? They're like, clunk, go get that, will you? Like that's just how, that's just how bad it is.
Family planning at its finest.
Yeah, right. but just joking aside, my friend's girlfriend at the time, she told me that she was sitting in the waiting room, right, waiting her turn, and of course they give you all this literature, okay? And so she's, flipping through this, and there's this girl, couldn't have been more than 16. Okay, sitting apart from her reading the same little pamphlet. And this girl looks up at my friend's girlfriend and says, "What's a miscarriage?" Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's how, hello? Let's, just, it's astonishing to realize just how on some of the most basic information just about your body, your reproductive, it's just that people are just uninformed, and I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that living as we do in this culture that is dominated by these religious beliefs that stigmatize these kinds of things. I mean, the church has had 2,000 years to make us ashamed of our bodies, okay, and this pattern isn't changing, and rather than just face in. People aren't getting educated because of the embarrassment that they'll face. Right. And they shouldn't be put in that position to be embarrassed about something that anybody with any sense ought to know about in the first place. These aren't,
What's the other story you have about contraception?
As a matter of fact, we have another. Oh wait, the contraception one is later, but we're just full of stories about family planning today.
Oh boy. Okay.
Next, we've got a state seeking a child that parents don't acknowledge. It's okay. Here we go.
How does this work?
It may be the most unusual case of a state trying to take custody of a child. The parents will not even confirm that the baby exists. For weeks, the state of Massachusetts has been wrangling with a couple who belong to a tiny religious group called The Body. Sounds very Orwellian.
Yeah, very Stephen King. That's kind of odd.
State officials say the couple, Rebecca and David Corneau, had a baby late last year, and a court has ordered the couple to turn it over for fear it is in danger. The dispute's roots extend back 3 years. State authorities hold members of the Body responsible for the death of 2 babies in 1999. They say one, a 10-month-old boy, was starved by his parents, who are members of the sect. Prosecutors say the other child, a son of the Corneus, died minutes after a home delivery because his lungs were not cleared. Based in Attleboro in southeastern Massachusetts, the Body is a fundamentalist Christian sect with about 20 members who reject modern medicine to such an extent that they will not use prescription eyeglasses. They also mistrust the government, surprisingly enough.
I'd like to hear from callers on this issue. If you're a caller and you're a Christian and you've heard this story, please give us a call and talk to us about why people might feel justified in doing this.
Get the number up for a little while.
But these guys...
I know, not yet, but...
But these guys in this little sect, right? I mean, now these are the...
I know, this is an extreme example. I'm not implying anything about our viewers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure any normal mainstream Christian is going to call them and say these people are lunatics, right?
Okay, now...
But what I want to know, though, is there are other groups that are not as fringe as these guys. Okay, these guys are so fringe there's only 20 of them. Okay, I mean, it seems like I think even the Heaven's Gate suicide cult had more guys than that.
Yeah.
Okay, but what is it about? I don't understand where it is in Scripture where you get to reject all sort of medical, just medicine.
Well, you know how it is. If it's not mentioned in the Bible, then it must not be in God's plan.
But if you're, so I don't just the groups that say no, well, we can't take our kids to doctors because somehow that's evil. I don't get it.
Okay, well, in another story about that relates to sex education, sex is not an Olympic sport. Two protesters showed up for Tuesday's demonstration at the Delta Center. They disagreed with the Salt Lake Organizing Committee's decision to stock the village with 12,000 condoms available at first aid stations.
Wow.
The Olympics should be about virtues, like the spirit of unity and sportsmanship.
Well, that's what
not
sex is
recreational sex, not even safe sex, said Brandy Swindle, director of Generation Life, a group of college students, artists, and musicians from Boise, Ohio.
Brandy, you need to get out and party some.
The group that's stocking it is SLOC, and they say we just consider it a good public health practice.
Well, duh.
Now, is anybody really surprised? You know, put the Olympics in Utah with all the Mormons. What did you think is going to happen?
But these protesters are from Boise, right?
Oh, well, yeah.
So you have to have these fundies from Boise come down to protest in Mormon land.
Oh, I guess so.
Because I don't know, it's kind of weird. But come on, I mean, two protesters, right? Who's going to take them? Just like it's like those two idiots in Seattle who are already in line for the new Star Wars movie.
Oh, yeah.
Even though it doesn't come out for 5 months. Boy.
Well, at least they're first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think everyone just ought to show up on the day of the movie and cut in front of them. Anyway, so
leading to a segue about another story in Utah, which has been making the rounds on our email group. A jury awarded $290,000 to two women who said they were deceived by a fundamentalist church whose leaders promised to produce Jesus Christ in the flesh. The True and Living Church of Jesus Christ of the Saints of the Last Days was ordered Monday to pay $270,000 to Keziah Hancock and more than $20,000 to Cindy Stewart for fraud, breach of contract, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now, I agree with the courts that it's a rotten thing for this church to be doing, and they should be punished for it. But about the people who got suckered, I just have one comment. How do you manage to tie your own shoes?
Yeah. All right. I mean, you could take the hard line, right? Which is that if these people are that stupid, okay, maybe they deserve to be fleeced.
No.
But come on. I mean, on the other hand, it's like, yes, I agree with the court in this instance, but, you know, hello, hasn't, like, every church in the history of the earth, like, been guilty of promising people these, you know, vague promises of stuff?
So, but, I mean,
maybe the only difference...
like they were pointing to some specific, like, you know, live from New York, it's Jesus!
Well, maybe. But, you know, that's the reason religion is such a great racket, right? Is that you don't ever have guys coming back from the dead, you know, going, it's no afterlife, sorry. You know, you don't get that. You know, nobody comes demanding their, you know, nobody, you know, from the grave is like, you know, just wants to let me out, there's nothing to, So it's, you know, demanding their money back, right? So that's why it's been such a good So maybe that is the technical difference here, was that they actually promised like some sort of physical incarnation of, but in that case they ought to nail Benny Hinn.
Maybe so.
Because Benny Hinn promised that that Jesus Christ would make a physical appearance.
He did?
At like 2 of his rallies.
Oh.
And this has all of, like, there's a million Christian websites.
Do you remember
went berserk over this.
At the end of Douglas Adams' the restaurant at the end of the universe? I actually read this quote right after Douglas Adams died on the air, where the great prophet Zarquan finally shows up just as the universe is about to end, and he says, "Hello, have I got just a minute?" And then the universe ends. Anyway, to close off this story, I've got a quote from someone involved with the church who is very disappointed with the verdict, saying, "God's people have always been persecuted, and right now is no different."
That's amazing. You know, I mean, yeah, they just, no matter what crimes they commit, they can always turn around to where they're the victim in it all.
Yeah.
You know, just sort of, anyway, here we are, and we're live, and this is a live call-in show. Before we get on over to Mary to talk about today's speaker and everything, and we just want to send a shout out to Ben Heath of the Daily Texan, who gave us this nice little article about us in Friday's paper.
Ben.
Yay!
Ben.
Really dug that. This is in Friday's edition of the Texan Fellowship Without the Dogma. All about us folks, and there's Laura Sargent and Philippe, our members. Laura's actually in the studio audience today, and some nice quotes. I get kind of quoted towards the end there. Probably the nicest local publicity we've gotten in a paper. So we really appreciate that, and we're probably getting some, I don't know if we're getting viewers and some new attention to the group because of that, but...
you realize we're competing with the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so if anyone out
right.
there at all in TV land is watching us today instead of the Super Bowl, well, we're certainly flattered.
Tune in.
But that's the number to call us in live to ask us questions about stuff. And now let's go over to Mary, and we had a really interesting guest speaker today.
We did indeed.
About talking about John Milton, famous poet
Yes.
wrote many works of religious note. I mean, Paradise Lost is the most famous one, but that wasn't the play that was the focus of today's talk, was it? It was something else.
It was, it was both, really. It was the play Samson Agonistes, the poem, rather, tragic poem.
Oh, right.
And basically the focus of the topic today was from Professor John Rumrich. He's a English professor at UT, and he is very involved in Milton scholarship, and he's traveled all around the world to teach folks about Milton and about Renaissance literature. And he graced us with his presence today, using grace in a very secular sense, obviously. But basically, the upshot of the presentation was that he focused mainly on the history of Milton's life. And I think, being atheist, a lot of people were a little bit afraid as to, well, what are atheists going to need to know or want to know about Milton, who was a Puritan and who obviously believed in God, wrote Paradise Lost, wrote Paradise Regained, and of course the poem we talked about today, which was Samson Agonistes. And I think there was some concern from people in the group and atheists and free thinkers who decided to show up, perhaps, that the focus would be more on religion. And I think everybody seemed pleasantly surprised that it wasn't. It was about Milton. It was about his life. It was about his time. It was about the history behind the poetry. And I think that really made a profound difference, at least I hope it did, in our guests today, and also the people who were able to attend. We also do have an audio tape of the presentation, so if anybody hasn't heard it yet, Ashley, who's also in the studio today, is working on getting that on CD. So we will certainly distribute that as soon as we can.
Yeah, maybe we can put it up as an MP3 file sometime or something.
You bet.
Maybe so.
You bet.
I have to admit that when I left this morning to see the lecture, I said to Ginny, I hope this isn't as boring as it sounds. And I was pleasantly surprised.
It was really compelling.
He said a whole bunch of interesting things that I didn't know, like that John Milton was one of the primary influences on Thomas Jefferson and Paine, among others, in establishing some fundamental American principles like separation of church and state, freedom of the press.
Yes.
I think he mentioned.
He wrote a tract called Areopagitica, Areopagitica, and that was about freedom of the press.
And considering that Professor Rumrich was not an atheist, I thought he was extremely graceful in handling a room full of us.
Well, I mean, he didn't strike me as being, somebody who was, unduly strident in whatever religious beliefs he might particularly have. But what was fascinating, of course, and what made this particular subject, I think, relevant to a group like ours, was not just from the standpoint of literature, and I think, atheists generally are fairly well-read people, and so we're interested in literature and history in general, but when Professor Rumrich talked about how, since September 11th, Samson Agonistes is a poem that he now applies a very different interpretation to, one that he admitted that he would not have applied, he would have thought might have been just a completely anachronistic or inappropriate interpretation to prior to that. Which was, what you had on September 11th was this one group of folks saying, well, let's go and destroy these people over here because they don't believe in our God. And what you have going on both in the biblical story of Samson And in Samson Agonistes, right, is all about Samson's essential suicide attack against the Philistines, where he pulls
the two pillars down.
The twin pillars, right, pushes them down, and kills not only himself, but apparently thousands and thousands of Philistines. And these are, of course, this had to do with this, there was, I think, the god Dagon, right?
Yes.
And then the Judeo-Christian god, and there was, so it was all about taking out the competition, as it were. And how that sort of thing becomes far more morally problematic in light of when you actually see it taking place in reality, and it's no longer this thing that is interpreted in this sort of fashion that you might interpret a poem or a work of literature, where it's not metaphorical, it's not allegorical. Now there's a very this whole literal idea that it's okay to use your ideology to like take lives of people who are opposed to it is very disturbing.
Yeah.
And John I'm sorry, go ahead.
And before this lecture, I'd already heard the comparison made to Samson as Samson being like some sort of religious terrorist, but I kind of rejected those because I thought, well, Samson was a prisoner after all. He was just fighting his captors, but what I didn't realize in this play was that Samson's life work was going out and antagonizing these people and killing them.
With the jawbone of an ass.
Right.
You could kill 1,000 foreskins.
Something like that.
I'm paraphrasing, but...
And also that he was in a room full of like people who weren't really fighters, but just people who were there to see some kind of show.
Yes.
Now, I'm told that
I'm
being told that my microphone is buzzing and that I'm sounding weird. Is this still the case, control room? Am I still sounding bad? Am I okay now? No.
Maybe it's because it's in your shirt.
Okay.
Well,
here I am, still on camera.
Hopefully we can tolerate this for a little bit longer, folks.
Hi, Russell.
So just tell me if I, testing.
Quick, give me something to read.
Okay, well anyway, I'm just going to talk, and if people say I can't handle it anymore, what we're going to do is let's actually go to a caller.
Good idea.
Okay.
How bad am I? Just give me like a thumbs up, thumbs down, or a hand wobble to indicate. Okay, we're waiting on word.
Let's...
Okay,
well, I tell you what,
we're going to keep going on.
Let me mention one other thing about Milton.
All right.
This is something that Professor John Rumrich also taught us in our Poetry of Milton class back in the spring of '94, is that Milton definitely had a sense of humor. However, his sense of humor was rather cutting, for lack of a better word.
That's the best kind.
Yeah, he was not a nice guy sometimes. I don't know if we can get a close-up of this, but we can see, I guess, first of all, if we could get a close-up of the textbook that we used in our class. There's a rather fine portrait of Milton on the front. And Professor Rumrich had also mentioned today that Milton's parents had paid to have Milton's portrait made when he was quite young. And I'm not sure if this is the portrait that he was referring to. But inside, there's also a frontispiece, which we also need to get a close-up on. Sorry, control room. This front piece, which has Milton's commentary about what he thought about this particular drawing. And in the camera, it looks pretty good, but if you compare it to the one that's on the front, this one is quite unflattering. But this epitaph, I don't know if you, or epigram rather, if you can read this, it's Greek.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anybody reads Greek out there, but if you do, it is Greek. Milton has a commentary. That commentary that's written in Greek was written by Milton about this particular drawing, and I wanted to read this. It's quite funny and quite mean at the same time. On the engraver of his portrait, viewing the original, you might say that this picture was done by an inept hand. Friends, since you cannot recognize the man depicted, laugh at the wretched picture of a wretched artist.
Boy.
So.
Yeah. Well. No, sure that guy didn't get any more work from him.
No, probably not.
Okay. Well, I have no idea how I sound now. I tried to mess with my battery, but we have some callers on the line, so let's go ahead and talk to them. And just in case you're watching us for the very first time, and you're calling us for the very first time, we have a website, atheist-community.org. There it is. on which there is a very informative and detailed fact page, frequently asked questions.
Most of which you and I wrote.
That's right. So on that page, we cover a lot of the most basic questions that some of our first-time callers give us. Just like, well, just the most basic questions that you might ask an atheist. They've probably already been covered. So have a look at that page if you get a chance. And otherwise, let's just go straight to it. I think we have Lurleen or somebody on line 1. We'll try to get a correct pronunciation of her
Lurleen.
name. Okay. Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
How do you pronounce your name, ma'am?
Lurleen.
Okay, Lurleen. Right. So how are you
Lurleen.
doing today? Thanks for waiting.
Lurleen.
Okay.
I was wondering how you became an atheist.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll start. I was raised by my parents in the Baptist church, and I just had a lot of questions and doubts about some of the teachings that I was being given, and I was asking questions and not getting very satisfactory answers. And the things that I was observing things in the world around me that didn't really jibe with a lot of the teachings of the church, and it was just a long process of coming to the decision that my religious teachings simply were not making sense, and they weren't standing up to my observations.
And you went to a Baptist church, you said?
Yeah, I was raised in a Baptist church, although my dad is actually Episcopal.
Oh, uh-huh.
And so my parents now go to an Episcopal church.
But they believe in the Lord, but you don't. Is that right?
That's correct, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, many of us do have religious upbringing. Some of us are, multi-gener. Like Russell, for example, is what are you?
I'll say,
Go ahead.
I'm actually quite unusual in the ACA. I'm a fourth-generation atheist. My father is an atheist, and he's a physicist, and he's been on this show before discussing some of the scientific information about the origins of the universe. He taught me a lot about atheism, but also when I went to school, I read the Bible and the Koran, and he never really pushed me to be an atheist, but he sort of steered me in that direction.
Well, he taught you critical thinking, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what about you, Mary?
My folks, I feel I was very fortunate in the sense that my folks allowed me to make the decision for myself about what I wanted to do in terms of my religious beliefs. And when I was very young, my parents always told me, if you ever want us to take you to church, please tell us because we'll take you. And they said, we just haven't really found a church that we enjoy and that we want to attend. So I ended up going to church fairly regularly with some friends, and I just didn't really find anything there that appealed to me or that I thought was something that really rang true in my own life. And as I got older, I really considered myself an agnostic, and it was only within the past year that I really realized, no, I'm definitely an atheist. And I think I always have been, but I still feel that it's important, to hear people and keep an open mind, but, for myself, I know I'm definitely an atheist, and I'm damn proud of it.
What do atheists believe?
I'm sorry?
What do atheists believe?
Okay.
Atheists,
may
I take it?
Sure, go ahead.
Is there an atheist God or what?
No, nothing like that.
That's a contradiction in terms,
there's-
actually.
Right.
Yeah.
So they don't believe in anything?
Well,
All atheists
Well,
don't believe. Atheists, the only thing that atheism means
This is here.
is that we don't believe, atheists don't believe that there are any gods or
And most
supernatural forces
Right.
at play. That's all it means.
right. Atheism is just you live your life without recourse to supernatural beliefs. Now, within that, atheists may have many differing beliefs on any number of things. For example, in our group, we have atheist conservatives, we have atheist liberals, we have atheist libertarians, we have atheist vegetarians, probably.
Yeah.
We have atheists who follow a objectivist philosophy. We have other atheists who think that's nonsense. The term atheism basically only means no gods. which means that we don't accept the notion that there are supernatural entities controlling the universe.
And
now, might there be other things?
Well, and you'll notice that even among us three, you get three completely different and unsimilar stories about how we became atheists. I mean, there isn't like one standard way of becoming an atheist, like being born again, for instance. It's just coming to the conclusion that it doesn't make sense to believe in something that you can't demonstrate is there.
So,
do y'all not pray?
No, ma'am.
Nope.
So how do you make it through each day?
Well, we get up out of bed and we shower and we go to work and we associate with our friends and our loved ones and we do our best to make every day as productive and as positive as we can. And it's very easy. And enjoy it. And it's very easy to do that without recourse to the invisible or the supernatural.
So you don't have anyone really to answer to, is that right?
No, ma'am, that's not true. We have one another to answer to as human beings. We have we have our communities and our
laws
and our laws, right?
Well, I didn't mean like answer to, but I mean, for instance, I'm a Christian and a born again Christian, and I believe in the Lord, and I pray every day and all that. Mm-hmm. So, whereas y'all don't. Mm-hmm. And I'm not judging y'all or anything. I want you to know that, because it says not, judge not that you be not judged. So I'm not judging. I'm just...
You're just curious what it's like to live without
by, how you can't, believe in the Lord. I just don't understand. But, I mean, that's your belief, and I have, my belief.
Right.
But I just...
I'll explain it to you. It's very simple.
You've explained it and everything, and I mean, you look around and that everything in the world that's been created and everything like that. I know one of you said that you went to church and you had, there was something there that didn't click or you didn't understand or it didn't. Go with what was in the Bible or something like that. I understand that. I just don't understand.
Well, let me sum it up in very simple terms that hopefully you'll have an easier time with. I'm perfectly happy to accept ideas or believe in things, if you want to put it that way. Although I don't usually like to use belief as a guideline, but I'll get into that in a second. I'm perfectly happy to be accepting of ideas for which I have good, solid evidence. My main reason for not believing in the existence of a god or gods is that I just do not see what I consider to be compelling evidence to support that idea.
But, I mean, he created the world.
I don't have evidence of that. I don't have evidence that the world was created by a supernatural being. I don't have evidence of that. I mean, were I to have evidence of that... Words in the Bible, there are 2,000 religions in the world, ma'am, and each one of them has its own holy writings.
Well, that's true.
I mean, so the words in a book don't constitute evidence of anything. Evidence is the stuff that's out there in the real world that you can get your hands around, okay, and you can experiment with, and you can test it, and you can get results from repeated, viewings of this. Evidence is stuff that gets to be examined from all sorts of different perspectives. You can't just look at words in a book, be it the Bible or be it Alice in Wonderland or even be it a book on physics or biology. Whatever the book is, words in a book alone don't constitute evidence of anything. Evidence is what exists in reality that supports the words in the book. Now, if there is evidence to support, for example, the Genesis creation story, then I'll be happy to look at it. I don't think there is such, but that's what the evidence would be. You can't just say, this is evidence. Well, no, that's really not what the definition of evidence is.
But it also says in the Bible that the Word of God is true.
Of course it does.
Yeah, I mean,
look.
We're not trying to be mean, laughing at you.
No,
but,
I understand.
What would you? I mean, that's what you'd expect the Bible to say.
I mean,
I know it because it says it's the word of truth.
Right. I mean, the Bible is the book that exists to promote people into becoming members of the Christian faith. So, of course, the Bible is going to say that it itself is true, naturally.
Right. A lot of people who don't have much experience with atheists start out by quoting the Bible and then quickly realize that for an atheist, the Bible is just another particular book that doesn't have a lot more relevance than, quoting Alice in Wonderland. I mean, there are some really good ideas in Alice in Wonderland, which is good to read about and think over, but that doesn't mean that, when I read about magic mushrooms that you eat and they make your neck grow to be 50 feet long, that means I take that literally.
Well, I mean, but that's only common sense. That's not going to happen.
Well, same thing for talking snakes and people living for 3 days in the 900 years.
3 days in the
belly of a whale.
See, there is
it was a fish.
Sorry, my mistake.
A great.
Well, no, I'm not. I mean.
Yeah. You see, the point that we're trying to make is that
big fish could be a whale. I don't know.
Lurleen.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to ask you: is there anything in particular that I know we don't have a lot of time. We need to go on to some other callers, but is there anything in your mind that makes you believe in God? I mean, do you feel like you have some evidence for that, or?
Yeah, above and beyond maybe just what's written.
Well, I was brought up in a church, and I had to go. And as a little kid, I didn't want to, but my parents made me go, and I continued to go and everything. Mm-hmm. And I received the Lord in my heart and became a born-again Christian, and read the Bible and everything. You have, with every day you have your good days, your bad days. I've been healed of different things. I was extremely happy once I accepted the Lord as my Savior. I take that back. I am extremely happy. I've seen lots of things happen. I don't know. I guess you just have to read it. I know every religion has, like Mormons believe different. Everybody has their own belief.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I believe, but I just can't
I understand
why y'all don't believe. But like I said, I'm not judging y'all. It's just mind-boggling that I don't know.
Well, I mean, we understand that a lot of people who grow up in a particular religious faith, because that sort of community does tend to insulate itself. It is very difficult for someone like yourself to understand how somebody can go through life without those beliefs.
That's very true.
Yeah, it's as I said. I mean, we're here to just say it's really quite easy. As I mentioned, I'm perfectly happy to accept ideas for which I have compelling evidence. I do not have compelling evidence right now to make me accept the supernatural beliefs of Christianity. Does this stuff absolutely not exist at all? I don't know that, but I think that it's kind of improbable at this point. But maybe you can keep watching our show here and maybe over the next few weeks, and you can find out a little bit more about what folks like us think about. But we appreciate.
And we're not here to change your mind.
Right.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand
Thank you for calling.
Yeah. But
this is very nice.
This is exactly why we're here, to let folks like yourself know why it is that people don't believe in some of the things you believe in. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
You have a nice day.
You too.
Bye, Lily.
Bye.
Yeah, see? Now, we'll just go on to our next call in just a second. But I was going to say, very nice lady, but this is part of, when you are brought up in that community and when you're isolated, you don't get exposed. They keep you from being exposed to other things. And so, consequently, some folks don't understand. But anyway, let's go on to line
Steve,
2.
could we get the call-in number back?
Yeah. The number to call us live is 477-2288, and ask us questions. Here we are. Hello.
Hey.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
Good show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Wow.
Well, it's kind of laid back today. Everyone's watching Super Bowl, I guess.
Yeah.
I suppose. Oh, not calls come in kind of slow?
Well, we've actually got a full lineup, but right now, and someone else is on, so they're actually starting to come in now.
Yeah, not everybody likes sports.
Well, that's true.
So your last caller, you explained to her that religious writings are not evidence.
Uh-huh.
That evidence is what you produce to support the claims in the religious writings. Then you asked her if she had any evidence, and she just referred back to the writings.
Right.
and her upbringing.
Yeah, see, I think that it's because that upbringing led her not really, I mean, clearly she wasn't informed as to what evidence really is. You know, she never got that as part of her religious upbringing or education.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Now, I also was taken to church and didn't really want to go, but I went to a less conservative fundamentalist church where we don't have some kind of special emotional ceremony where you finally commit your entire being to this idea that they haven't proved to you yet. Mm-hmm. And so I was still free as I was growing up to keep thinking about it, and eventually, I had to start listening to what my brain was telling me. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get back to the reason I called this. I wanted to get back to one of the things you said early on in the show, talking about sex education.
Oh, right.
I see a pattern here.
Don't we all?
I mean, it's not just sex education. Mm-hmm. It's also evolution. It's also science-based cosmology. It's also that various religious groups are against the teaching of like self-esteem related classes to kids.
Okay,
it seems like there's an immediate negative reaction to educating human beings about anything that they're gonna be real interested in, like sex or ultimate questions, and when there's the threat that the public is going to be informed of answers to those questions, when they're going to stop being mysteries and start being things that they understand and can make informed decisions about, that's bad for the religion industry. Yeah, because the religion industry thrives
on mysteries,
on mystery, right. on people being ignorant, being worried about these mysterious problems that they have no answer to, and they want those to remain mysterious problems that they have no answer to.
Actually, this reminds me of something else that Douglas Adams wrote, because it turns out later in his Hitchhiker's Guide series that the reason the Earth got blown up before they could figure out the ultimate question of life was because a bunch of psychiatrists paid the demolitionists to do it so that so that the need for psychiatrists wouldn't become obsolete.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's an extremely valid point. I mean, anything that threatens the autonomy of religion is going to come down on very, very hard. But what's interesting though is that when the other shoe finally does drop, right, and knowledge ekes out that the movers and shakers and the powers that be in the religious community might not have wanted to emerge. It's interesting how adaptable religion suddenly becomes to the circumstance.
Sure. Suddenly, okay, so we can't keep claiming that evolution isn't true. So now we're going to claim that it's this system that was set up by God.
Yeah, and then you have those guys who say the Quran predicted the Big Bang or embryology.
Well, what was it that you guys were talking about yesterday on the radio show? And
I think that we've pretty much identified just there the difference between liberal and conservative religions, right? Conservative religions are the ones that don't want there to be any kind of other answers at all, and liberal religions are the ones that accept the discoveries of science, but then claim that their God is responsible for them.
Or how about conservative religions are the ones that change the facts to fit the religion, and liberal religions change the religion to fit the facts.
Well done. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Those are all good points.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're doing a great job, guys.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. And, of course, that was Jeff D. Jeff D. is the host of The Non-Prophets, which is a really great new internet radio show sponsored by ACA, and it plays every Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock p.m. on the atheistnetwork.com website. Your web browser, there it is. Bingo.
And Mary is one of our co-hosts.
And Mary and Vic Farrow are both the co-hosts, and that's your web browser is going to need the Real Player plugin to hear the audio stream, but check that out. It's a very fun, just hour of banter back and forth, and there's also a chat room that you can log on to and participate in at the same time.
And Russell's the producer.
Yes, and your friendly chat room host.
Yeah.
So if you log on and, chat back and forth with the chat room, you'll be talking to Russell. But that's all kinds of fun, so let's just keep it going with the calls are fairly steady on this Super Bowl Sunday. Let's go to John on 3 and see what he has to say. Thanks for everyone for holding.
Hello.
Hello, John?
Oh, hello, sir.
Yeah, hi, you're on the air.
Hi, John.
Hey, I'm Christian myself, but I was just wondering how y'all felt, and I'm also heterosexual, but how y'all felt about homosexuality.
Shall I?
Well, I was just going to
I'd
say
like to take that too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say a person's sexuality is their business, dude. That's, I don't care. I mean, it's.
So there's no set belief on it then?
Not really.
No.
I've actually known atheists who have some kind of problem with homosexuality, but I mean, as for me, I'm married to a great woman, but anything a guy wants to do is his business.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
also,
it's not my business to judge of what other people do in their private lives.
Okay. Also, have any of y'all been baptized? I know one of y'all said that you were.
Yeah, actually, I did get dunked. Yeah, yeah, I did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
In what religion?
I was in the Baptist church in Houston.
Oh, okay. So you were Baptist then?
Yeah.
Okay. In the last question, what point in your life did you decide to become atheist?
Well, like I said, it was a process that kind of started in my late teens and continued through my college years, and it was, I would say that although I was very skeptical and dubious all through that time, it was roundabout when I was in my mid-20s that I just said, I don't believe this stuff. I mean, as much of a chance as I want to give it, I just don't believe this stuff. So it
wasn't like you just woke up one morning and was like, "Hey, let's be atheist." Or
I think you'd find that that rarely happens. People who I mean, I'm not speaking from personal experience because my father was an atheist, and that's pretty much the way I've always been. Although I've looked at alternative viewpoints, but. From my experience, people who do go from being religious to becoming atheist don't have an individual moment. What they have is many years of thinking and reading and going, "Oh my God, I can't give up this belief in God. That would just turn my whole life around, and that would just destroy me." And it doesn't.
Yeah, because most of us.
But there isn't a born again moment.
Yeah, because most of us, we are raised in this culture, which is predominantly religious, and many of the ideas and the tropes and the teachings are, they plant them in there pretty well, and you really have to work to sort of get around that and think of the implications of the things that you're taught.
Oh yeah.
And say to yourself, oh, but gee, if this is true, then yeah. So yeah, I think you'll find that for many, many atheists, there wasn't just this moment of breaking away. I mean, it's a process, and it just has to do with the fact that in my case, I couldn't reconcile it. I just could not say to myself that there was really any way that I could be honest with myself and say I believed it.
And I tell you, John, I wrestled with it for a long time internally because I didn't want to think that I would never get to see my loved ones again. That I would never, live in some kind of heaven or state of grace or, some infinite universe. But, when I think about the laws of nature and the way that the world really is, it just made more and more sense to me that there's no way there is anything beyond this existence. And that's why we need to cherish it as much as we do, as much as possible. And, enjoy the time that we have with family and friends as much as possible. Because for all we know, this is it.
Okay.
So there you go.
All right, thanks.
Hey, thanks a lot, man.
Thanks
for calling.
Okie doke. Let me see. And we have Malcolm now on line 1. Let's see what Malcolm has to allow. Malcolm?
Hello.
Hi, you're on the air.
Fellow nonprofits.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi. This is in reference to, Jell, a couple of viewpoints regarding that religion generally draws on the ignorance of people. I couldn't agree with that more. And a perfect example of this, you could probably see this with the recent war that's going on, and the thing that I'm calling in for is, would you agree that in the past 2,000 years, religion has had more to do with all of the wars that we've had than any other type of reason for wars taking place than any other factor? Would you agree with that?
It's really hard to make sweeping statements like that because, if you start bringing up, oh, well, you guys have the Crusades, then they'll go, oh, well, I'll raise you Joseph Stalin and the communists, and then you just get
Nazis
in this... Nazis weren't
not a religion,
but I mean, that's the sort of can of worms you open. And a lot of even a lot of wars that apparently are started by religion are sometimes you can trace it back to they're using religion for power purposes. I mean, certainly religion facilitates somebody who wants to get in power and says that they've got God behind them. And I'm sure that a lot of things like the Crusades are purely religiously motivated. But to say the vast majority, I wouldn't be confident to make that kind of statement.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I think it is. It's very simplistic, as he says. It's very easy to get into that trap where you make if you make a sweeping generalization, you can immediately be and I think very correctly be criticized for making a very superficial condemnation of religion. And we don't mean to say, of course, that religion makes people do bad stuff like have wars and crash planes into buildings and do this and that and the other thing, because of course there are millions and millions.
Sometimes it does.
Yeah, there are millions and millions of very devoutly religious people all over the world who are perfectly sweet, nice people. I mean, we've heard from many very nice callers today. I mean, I can't imagine Lurleen or anybody else ever doing hurting a fly. But what can be said is that when you have a belief system, okay, that is unproven, all right. It seems to me that all bets are off. Okay, you can use such a thing. Okay, such a thing can, for a certain person, maybe bring a degree of comfort to their lives. Maybe it can make them a nicer person. Okay, maybe. I wouldn't suggest that it's necessary to have that sort of thing to become a nicer person, obviously, because we don't have supernatural beliefs, and I think we're all nice people. But, okay, for some people, religion may make them very nice and happy folks. But at the same time, it seems like it's just as easy for a guy to take that kind of belief and say, well, God or Allah wants me to drop this big bomb over here, or wants me to poison this water reservoir, or do this kind of thing because, all of these nasty infidels kind of, deserve what's coming to them. I mean, when you have a belief system that's unproven, well, then you can use it to justify whatever you want.
And if you don't have a system of proof and evidence set up, then there's no way to disprove that God told you to go kill your son on an altar, for instance, which is a good biblical example that I like to bring up.
So it's the short version is that there is that room for abuse and for using religion as an excuse to do bad stuff. And a lot of that has to do, of course, with the fact that the beliefs that religion promotes just aren't founded in good, strong, real-world evidence. Despite what a lot of the most devout adherents will think, it just isn't. So, how do you tell a guy who says God wants me to do this or do that or kill these people or do these other horrible things with bombs and rockets? How do you tell him, well, no, God didn't say that to you? Oh, really? I mean, how do you tell him that? You can't. I mean, if he's got God whispering in his telling him, giving him instructions, so that's kind of our take on that.
Still there?
Yeah, I just read in a couple of articles that has been I'm not making a sweeping generalization that all wars are caused by religion per se, but that out of all the wars in the past 2,000 years, the most dominant factor related to the causation of such wars has been something to do with a conflict regarding one's belief in God versus another group of people regarding their belief in God.
Right. I'm sure
I
you've
would
heard.
say that's a very strong
Yeah.
factor in many wars.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, there are clearly many millions of people alive who would be alive today who aren't, were it not for somebody on some sort of holy rampage.
I'm sure you've heard Madeline Murray O'Hare's famous quote on that, where she said, "Religion has caused more misery than any other single idea." And I think that pretty much sums up every holy war I can think of.
Yeah. You know, and again, it all has to do with what happens when these beliefs are grabbed a hold of by somebody with a big agenda to pursue, and this big mission in life that they want to fulfill. You know, clearly not every religious person you know, exhibits their beliefs that way. You know, in fact, it's very, very few people, right? Maybe, but. You know, I mean, it was only 19 guys, okay, on September 11th who changed the world, all right? It's 19 guys. So it doesn't take a whole lot of people to do that. But still, the point is not, you know, the fact that only a teensy-tiny minority of people in any given religious community are actually the ones crazy and wacky enough to do crazy and wacky things. The point is that when you have beliefs that are unfounded in evidence and that just aren't strong enough, aren't worthy of belief in the first place. These strange, invisible, supernatural concepts whose existence you simply have to take on faith. Well, again, all bets are off, okay? You know, it's like this, you know, it's this loose cannon that's just firing shots wherever, you know, and it's going to hit a target at some point, and, you know.
I think a really good way to sum it up, a couple of years ago, we had Steven Weinberg as a lecturer, who's a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, and he gave a fantastic lecture. And one of the things he said that stuck with me is that good people always do good things, and bad people always do bad things. But for a good person to do a bad thing would take religion.
Well,
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Well, Malcolm, thank you for your call.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Take care. All right. Let's see. We'll go to, let's just keep the mojo going. This is fun. Bonnie is on line 2. Hello, Bonnie.
Hello.
You're on the air.
Bonnie.
How you doing?
I just wanted to, this is the first time I've seen your show, and I just wanted to commend you. It's a great show.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do believe in a higher power, and my experience of atheism has always been sort of negative, just because Miss O'Hare, she was kind of a negative person, and everything was sort of argumentative, and
You mean she was a bitch? No, you can say. I mean, you can say it.
But a damn smart
I mean,
bitch.
you know, I used to see her all the time. We used to go to the same JoJo's for breakfast.
Yeah.
And she'd never say hello, and I
She
always
can be
knew
very
that-
brusque.
Yes.
But, you know, you have to consider that this woman and her children had not only death threats made,
Yes.
but, you know, her kids were beat up.
Yes.
You know,
Oh.
she had just a horrendous,
She lived in a very different time.
tortured life,
Yeah. I
you know,
mean-
because of what she did.
She
Because-
totally did.
Yeah,
I agree.
to be an atheist in America in the 1950s and 60s was pretty grim.
Yeah, it was pretty grumpy.
So it would make you a bitchy person. But
It
anyway,
wouldn't make me
what
a
can we do
bitchy
for you
person.
today?
But anyway, I just wanted to commend you because I think you're showing a great side of atheism, and I just think it's great.
Well, thanks. I mean,
that is very nice.
we're just trying to let folks know that atheists are just folks, right?
Right, and you can be happy too.
Yeah, well, it's just, you know, it's, that's your line, Mary. You know, it's all about this. You know, this is what, sometimes when Christians ask me why I don't believe in God, right, sometimes I'll say, well, you know, do you believe in Zeus or Thor or some of the Egyptian gods? Or
Right.
I'll go through a list of a lot of ancient gods. And if they tell me, well, no, I don't, which they usually won't, well, I'll say, well, there you go.
There you go.
I don't believe in your God for the same reason that you don't believe in those gods.
Right.
And, you know, it doesn't have anything to do with whether you're a nice person or a bad person. But although sometimes we get into some nice and juicy arguments on this program, because there are some folks out there who very much insist that without religious beliefs, you can't know how to behave.
Right.
And we would like to challenge that. So we just want to present this whole idea that, look, you know, it's life. You know, life is worth living, and you know, you don't really need recourse to the supernatural in order to get a lot out of it.
Exactly.
So-
And that's, I think, exactly what you're doing.
Well, Well, thanks.
Well, you're welcome.
Well, feel
thank
free
you.
to call us anytime.
Okay,
and
bye.
we'll continue to be happy and perky for you.
Bye, Bonnie.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
We have so many nice callers today. I'm thinking all the mean ones must be football fans.
Maybe that's it, yeah. Speaking of this, I'd like to just, before we, we'll go on to Jennifer in just about 2 shakes. But I just wanted to bring up one little point, and this is something that I think is kind of goofy that's going on, pertaining to the game today. The Bush administration has purchased 2 minutes of airtime.
About that.
They've bought these ads that are going to run during the Super Bowl, right? And some people watch the Super Bowl for the ads, because this is like when the advertising community like breaks out its little, cinema masterworks, right? But they've bought these ads stating that if you are a drug user, then you are supporting terrorists. Okay, now, here's the thing. I'm a proponent, actually, of the war on terror, all right? I think this, we're doing what needs to be done, and, sure, it's not going to be perfect, but, there's, that's just, I'm supportive of this. But the problem is now that what worries me is that Bush is going to be using his high poll numbers that he has as a result of this war on terror to do goofy stuff. Other stuff that he wants to do, and he's going to be writing these poll numbers, trying to like the vouchers and this whole thing with fetuses are now real children.
Don't think that that's not
faith-based initiatives, right? And this whole idea is now that if you criticize him for any, not just for the handling of the war, but if you criticize him for any of his policies, you're like this un-American, unpatriotic person. Which I think is hogwash, okay? Patriotism is about loving your country, okay? It's not about, like, this unwavering support of every single thing your government does, okay? It has
if that was true, what's up with all the people that were beating up on Clinton for the last 8 years?
Right, yeah.
Is that un-American, guys?
Well, no, but, now, as far as these ads are concerned, right? Now, I can think of any number of commonsensical, health-based, personal responsibility-based arguments you can use to, like, tell people, hey, don't do drugs, right? But this whole thing of, you're a supporter of terrorists if you do drugs, and that makes you maybe a traitor or un-American, is like, what's up with...
where we've seen this kind of tactics before is in the 1950s, during the McCarthy era. Vic brought this up on the show yesterday, and I thought that was a
very
great
good point.
Because it's exactly what Joe McCarthy was doing by saying, well, if you disagree with me, you're a commie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that you necessarily want to support communism, just like you don't want to support terrorism. But to say that anyone who is opposed to me on whatever issue I happen to be pushing right now must be a commie or a terrorist is frankly very scary.
Now, I don't think Bush is quite as flagrant or as
not yet
bad as McCarthy, but there's clearly people on the far right who would be perfectly happy to take that tack. Now, and you're right, it hasn't gotten that far yet, but clearly what he wants to do is ride these high poll numbers.
Right.
And just expect everybody now to just, you're happy with the way I'm handling, these terrorist guys.
Yeah, he's like a kid with a credit card in a toy store.
Now he's like, oh boy, now I can make Super Bowl ads. So, look, I mean, it's just, let the guys who are handling the war handle the war, and they're doing, Colin Powell and all those guys, let them do their jobs, and,
I suggest that we call the Super Bowl, it should be Shrub Bowl.
Well, first off, okay. Hello, how many stoners watch the Super Bowl anyway, right? I mean, it's like, I just can't. And how many of them, even if they are going to, see this ad and go, dude, man, I better, flush this bag right now, man. You're, supporting those, Afghani dudes, man. That's
right.
It wasn't even very good weed anyway, dude. So it's just very, very silly.
And even more recently than the 50s, the 80s with the Just Say No campaign against drugs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just propaganda.
That was apparently just Nancy Reagan had an offhanded remark, and I'm no Nancy Reagan.
They had
fan,
ads and everything.
Yeah, but some PR person said, there's a great little catchphrase, and but anyway,
let's go on to the next.
All right,
Jennifer
on 3. Let's keep her going. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, guys.
Hi, thanks for holding.
I work with people who are terminally ill and at the end stages of their life and dying, and I'm wondering if any of you can maybe speak from your own personal experiences of having a loved one who has died in terms of what type of comforting things that you would say to them. It's typically a very difficult time, and people who have been part of a very structured religion also question their faith at that time.
Right.
Well, if someone is terminally ill and they already believe in a higher power, I don't think that's the time to start saying, have you ever considered that there may not be anything beyond this life?
Definitely not.
Yeah, that would not be.
That's certainly not anything any atheist that I know of would advocate. So, but as far as offering comfort to people, I think if someone is dying, the idea is to offer what would give them comfort. And if offering someone comfort means, I need to listen to them, explain to me their beliefs in God, then I think that's what I need to be there for them to do. That's not the time for me to get up on my soapbox and say, you don't need to believe anymore because this isn't really true. Of course, as an atheist, I would like to believe that people would be willing to consider that there is not a God or any kind of higher power. But for someone who's terminally ill, I watched my grandmother die in the hospital, and she had Alzheimer's. And I know that she believed, devoutly in God all her life, and I'm sure she did when she took her last breath. And again, that's not something I'm going to question at that point. I think it's more important to be there to comfort her, and to answer your question, I think anytime we're bereaving, it's important to remember what that person wanted their life to mean, So.
I mentioned earlier on the show that I'm a fourth-generation atheist. In fact, some Christians would have you believe that everybody, when they're getting near death, is going to have a sudden moment of panic and realize, I better accept Jesus now. According to a family story, my great-grandfather actually died reading Bertrand Russell on his deathbed. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a comforting thing, but here's what my father has always told me, is basically that the measure of a person's life is basically how they lived it, because everybody in the world is sort of connected to each other in some way. And to be able to look back on your life and say, hey, I had a big effect on a lot of lives of people who are still living, and, I left the world a little better place than I found it. I really did it right. Seems like a very comforting thing to be able to say to yourself when you're finished.
Right, and I think one of the things in working with people that I've learned is that idea of life review and going back and seeing your connectedness with other people. Yeah. Some people classify that as a humanist belief or connection. Other people see that as God. And it's interesting to me to listen to you and talk about atheism and still have that sense of community, or look back and see that life review, see that connectedness with others, and you not being able to say it's connected to God, but I can still believe that, and you can still appreciate the connectedness that we have with each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, there's a mistake that a lot of people make, is that they assume that if a person doesn't believe in a God or a supernatural deity or higher power, that you therefore don't have any value for the lives we live now. And that simply isn't true. It simply isn't true. My view is that because life is so brief, and we are here for, but the twinkling of an eye or whatever, I'm sure I'm misquoting somebody, that's what makes it all so precious. That's what makes it so special, is the time that we spend here. We need to do the best we can. And, what is more valuable overall? Something that is temporary and fragile, and that you'll only have it for a while, and so therefore you must make the best of it, or something that you just get to have forever and ever and ever with no risk or fear of losing it for any reason. Now, That's not to say that if eternal life were in the offering, I wouldn't be interested, but still, realistically, I mean, it's realizing that, you know, I'm here for whatever my 70 or you know, whatever time I have here, you know, I just, you know, I make every day valuable. And as I get older and maybe a little more mature, I think more and more along those terms.
Right.
And now, as for my parents, right, I mean, you've probably heard earlier on the show, I grew up in a religious family, and I'm now at a point, I'm realizing that my parents are aging, and I am coming to terms in advance of the fact that, you know, they won't be around a lot longer, and so I'm kind of preparing myself for that. And I know that they're going to have, you know, little, you know, desires and dispensations in their will as to how they want their funerals carried out, and, you know, they're going to want to have things done within their church, and I'm going to respect that, you know, and I'm going to see to it that their wishes are dealt with and carried out. You know, and I'm not going to be there, you know, being all Mr. Huffy Atheist about it and being offended that I'm in this big, you know, service where, you know, dozens of their friends are praying over their bodies. You know, I'm not going to do that. I mean, people will grieve in their own way. The time for debate between atheism and theism is at times like now when, you know, we're all here and we're healthy and we have an opportunity to think about stuff and bad ideas off each other. We don't seek to convert folks, right, to atheism. That's not what we're here for. But we just want people to understand the way in which we think, how we apply principles of critical thinking.
But I think it's also very important just to show how vulnerable each of us are, and there's nothing more real in this world than dying and the process of dying. And you know, to see that it doesn't matter how pitted we are against other, the atheist community or other faith communities, we're all vulnerable to question our faith and what we really believe when we're dying.
Sure.
And the other thing I was also wondering was a sense of gratitude in how we live our daily life is often also connected with spirituality. And I'm wondering how, if you feel that sense of gratitude, or how you would describe that and what that means to you in your life.
You want to start?
I wouldn't call it gratitude. I feel like I really enjoy living my life from day to day, but I mean, being grateful would mean there's somebody I'm grateful to, and I don't think there is.
Well, I'm grateful to my mom and dad for like getting together that night, you know, and you know, and
you can certainly be. I mean, that's what I was wondering. If you're grateful to the people you're connected to.
Okay, yeah. I was just going to say though that. What I like, you use the term spiritual, and the way that I often interpret that is, you know, not believing in otherworldly realms is just someone's emotional like well-being. Okay, that's what I think of when I hear that somebody has like a spiritual connection to stuff. It means to me that they feel really good about something, and so yes, I'm you know, happy to be alive. I mean, I can't really. I don't have any experience of the alternative. You know, and if I did, well, then I wouldn't be able to come back and say, I prefer this. But yeah, again, it comes back to valuing the time that I have here because it's the time that I have here, and wanting to make the best of it, and you know, before and leave my best legacy, you know, when I go behind me. And that's what it comes down to for me.
Well, thank you all very much for sharing your thoughts and views.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your call. And I just wanted to say briefly, just instead of being grateful to a thing or a being, I mean, I'm just grateful for moment to moment, you know, and just this time now, you know, I don't know what it's going to be like once we leave the studio, you know, but it doesn't really matter. You know, what matters is the time that we have right now at this moment, and the time that we can share with each other. So, anyway.
But, I mean, you know, we all think about our future,
Are we all going to, like, break out into... Are we all going to, like, hug each other?
Yeah, sing Kumbaya.
This is like...
No.
This is like the huggiest warm... This is like the warm, fuzzy atheist hour.
I'm going to write that on this page.
This has just been the nicest show we've... Well, you know, I mean, we've had an opportunity. Today's just been a very, you know, it's just been a good day.
Yeah.
And...
Thanks, Jennifer.
Like you said. So anyway, okay, Prue is on line 1. Been holding for some time, and so we'll see.
Sooner or later, our streak's going to be broken.
Hello, Prue.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for waiting so long.
That's all right.
What can we do for you?
Well, I had a couple things.
Sure.
One, I wanted to expound on the
comment about, with life-altering or life-changing experiences, and you said you kind of grew out of your religious background into your thinking now. What does a person do when they are faced with not necessarily death, but a situation in their life that is so devastating and or basically shattering, and they basically relied on the higher power, however you want to call it or claim it, and all of a sudden, you've been praying to this deity, and what's before you, nobody's going to help you. The support group you had, they just go, keep right on praying. Well, the prayers aren't going to solve the problem. It's the support group that needs to be there to help the person kind of guide them along. And then the second issue is you talked about Bush in these commercials. This is just a start. This is the start of the roundup of the people who really are truly patriots. I mean, you talked about the drug issue, but if there's people in the Libertarian Party who believe that government should not be in anybody's private life. Well, now are those people unpatriotic? Kind of a thing.
Well, again, I think it has to do with that perversion of the definition of patriotism, which where I interpret patriotism to be loving your country, and it's patriotism is not kissing up to your government at all times. I don't think patriotism has anything to do with how you feel about your government. It has to do with how you feel about your country.
Of by and for the people.
And people who are willing to stand up and say, when their government is doing stuff it shouldn't be doing, and say, hey, you guys shouldn't be doing that, that's a true patriot. So yeah, I mean, I am concerned about this whole idea of writing these Bush writing his unprecedented poll numbers to do other less cool stuff, and if anyone opposes that, he can play the card of, well, you must be un-American if you're against me. That's very,
it's dangerous.
Yeah, that's
what that is.
Hopefully, people will have the guts to call him on that. So I guess we might need to keep Tom Daschle from catching anthrax. But to get back to your first point, I think it.
Oh, can I say one quick thing about that?
Oh no!
I was just going to say that thing you said about prayer and support groups reminded me of Dumbo's magic feather. You think that it's prayer and appeal to the higher power that's getting you through the day, and then somebody yanks it away and you realize, oh, the feather wasn't really magic. It's just getting the support of nice people who tell me that I can get through it.
Yeah. Of course, a classic example of what you were talking about was, the way in which people reacted to September 11th, right? Mm-hmm. What you find when you have, I think, folks who the folks who have very, very, very strong religious beliefs tend to experience, when you're faced with as unequivocal a tragedy as that, you get hit very hard with a lot of cognitive dissonance. And you find yourself asking yourself, well, why would my God let this kind of thing happen? And then at this point, it's just this process of coming up with, a whole litany of excuses until you find one that kind of sounds good to you. There must have been some reason, and whether it ends up being some completely perverted idea like Jerry Falwell came up with, which there's too many gays and lesbians in America, so it was God lifted his magic shield of protection and gave us what we deserve, which I don't think most Christians think that that's kooky, or so whether it is an excuse as fringe as that, or whether it's something that just ends up satisfying the individual believer per se, you still end up with a person who gets thrown into this turmoil of, how do I reconcile this? With my belief in this divine being who is loving me and protecting me and watching over us all.
Sure.
And with this horror that I'm seeing on my television every day. It must be very, very difficult, and my sympathies go out to folks who find themselves thrown into that. And at that point, and in circumstances like that, it's all too easy for us as atheists to just kind of get all smug about it. And just well, see, there's no God. But we have to you have to realize the difficulty that a lot of folks are having at this time, and this is the problem that religious belief puts you into. Sometimes you just end up being backed up against this corner that you have to kind of fight your way out of, and it can be a tough thing.
Well, what do you all do when you're faced with someone someone in your life that you love very much who is faced, when you're dealing with a situation where someone you love very much is faced with, and I'm not talking about being terminally ill, but if you want to qualify the situation this person is as if they're feeling like they're terminally ill because they feel like there's no way out, and they're basically faced with death in a situation, but not physical death, and that they have no way out because what's really happening is the people are in control. The people who are in control of the potential, this person's destiny, are from the religious right, and they get up and beat their chests and say, we're righteous and we're legal and all this stuff, and
Are you speaking about someone who might be suicidal or very depressed, and so they don't really have...
No, I'm talking about a person who's in a legal situation, who basically has been a very spiritual person his entire life, who's faced with a legal situation that is just almost, it's atrocious.
Wow.
How do you all deal with that kind of adversity when you're faced with something that serious?
I would have to say that the only thing I could really do is offer them moral support and friendship and, maybe a little bit of financial support, and I'd find that has just as much effect to a person in the right mindset as telling them that their magic friend will help them.
Not knowing more about the specific circumstance you're talking about, and you're clearly talking about something that's really going on.
Yeah.
But you're also, I can tell you're reluctant to give details.
I can't.
Yeah.
Yes, for legal. So
I mean, it's basically a person who's been accused
Russell
of a crime that they didn't commit.
Yeah. We've actually had a guy in our group that happened to.
Okay.
He was accused of a crime he didn't commit.
Okay.
And he went through a turmoil of many months. Fortunately, he, justice prevailed and he got out of his situation. But it was a situation where, because of that, he kind of went away for a while, and a lot of us weren't cognitive of his situation. Had we been, we certainly would have been there to do, as Russell said, just lend moral support, just be there to be friends, to be a friend, and say, look, we know that you're a good guy, and everything's going to be fine, and I'm just here to let you know, we're not going to let you go. In this. And
just out of curiosity, this wasn't in Williamson County that happened to your friend, was it?
No, this was elsewhere.
Okay.
Williamson County, that's pretty rough territory.
Well, I'm really glad to get the feedback from you on how you all would handle it, because that's the most positive thing that I've heard from anybody so far.
Well, thank you.
Glad we could be here.
Kind of too bad.
It's unfortunate.
And we wish you and your friend best of luck with the situation, whatever it is.
Definitely.
Hopefully it all comes around.
I appreciate it.
All right, well, you take care.
Thanks.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.
We're down to 4 minutes.
We are, and I'm afraid that we're going to try to get them both in.
Three,
okay.
actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bob was
Hope
first.
They have quick
So
questions.
these are our last two. Hello, Bob.
Hi, guys.
Hi,
How
Bob.
you doing?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for holding for a while. We're down to our last 4 minutes, so we'll let you have one question.
Okay, it's not a question, it's just a comment.
Okay.
I just want to say that organized religion, no matter how good it seems, no matter how much people believe in God, it's always led to violence, torture, the Inquisition. It just led to all kinds of nasty stuff. And I don't know why people just don't look at reality like y'all guys talk about. And I believe, y'all do such a good show. You've got people on ACTV, ACAC that talk about the conspiracies, the elitists.
We won't mention
and all
names.
that. And you guys kind of I love you because you talk about you talk about these things.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, that was...
I'm sorry, I missed the end of that.
I'm not very articulate, but
No, hey, listen.
you're doing a good job. So,
Well,
Thank you
we
for
appreciate
calling.
that. We appreciate that very much, Bob. Thanks for calling.
Thanks, Bob.
Well, we just try our best and ask for why people don't look at reality. Eternal life and seeing your dead loved ones again is a heck of a selling point. Okay, well, we're going to go to Julie for the last call really quickly. Hi, Julie.
Yes, I have
Hey,
a question. for
sorry
you.
to keep you waiting so long. We have time for one question for you.
That's okay. What exactly is an atheist, and where do you base your belief on?
Okie doke. Atheists are people who do not believe in any gods. And
believe in
so
anything?
atheists, therefore, are defined more by what we don't believe rather than what we do believe.
Okay, so
But
what do you
atheism
believe?
is not a religion. That's an important distinction that I think people get confused on sometimes.
Yeah, you know, on our website at atheist-community.org, we have a fact page. If you could click on FAQ, and we have a little bit more of a detailed answer to that question if you'd like to read that.
Okay, so there's no way you can give me a detailed answer now?
Well, okay, we're down,
We have
to, we're
1
down to
minute.
like 40 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, so what don't you believe?
Well, we don't believe that there are big, invisible, magical deities controlling the universe who are all-powerful and all-seeing and all-knowing. If we have evidence to that effect, we'll look at it, but right now we don't have enough to make us believe it. Okay?
Okay.
Well, thanks for your call.
Call
and
back next week if you can.
Yeah, call back next week earlier on, and we'll try to give you some more time, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, well, this was just the huggiest show
It was.
Atheist experience ever.
Thanks to John Rumrich for
Thanks
today's
to John
lecture. We
Rumrich
really
for
appreciate
today's
it.
lecture. David Clark will be back next week if he's well.
Thanks to all our callers for being so nice to us.
Yes,
Yay.
and Christians,
We don't hate you. We just think you're wrong.
Bye.
Bye.
See everyone next Sunday. And have fun watching the rest of the Super Bowl.